Hello, I'm Tom Hawkins, President of Fire Mitigation Alliance, and we're bringing to you this webinar recorded on September the 17th, 2025. Anyways, we have a group of experts and people that deal with lithium fire issues or safety issues around lithium batteries on this webinar. And there's going to be some great conversations and great engagement from all the players. Um, Especially this, so if you are a building manager, building owner, um, work in a workplace that you're concerned about lithium battery safety in general, and what to do if something really bad goes wrong with batteries catching on fire. Um, Whether you're in a residence, a high rise, or industrial type facility, how to respond, mitigate these events, and using best practices and tools and developing a strategy is what you're going to learn on this webinar. Your host is Adam McFadden. Adam McFadden travels North America learning and meeting people. He's an expert in HAZMAT with a real specialty and interest in the lithium battery safety world. Teaches firefighters and first responders as well as building in the built environment, what to do, not to do, where to put batteries, not to put batteries. And so you're going to learn about that today. With that, I'm going to start introducing some of the partners that we have on the call and are part of the Fire Mitigation Alliance. I also act as Vice President of Amplicam. We are early detection wildfire detection system. They'll pick up wildfires from within 30 kilometers of a tower above the tree line. We also can do near field type of search for within a community as well to pick up fires. We call it near field detection. So within 500 meters, we can detect somebody that's shouldn't be parked in a region at 3 in the morning, overheating batteries that are from an exterior perspective, not within the building. And also the wildfire detection up to 30 kilometers, we can detect a wildfire from 30 kilometers away. So that's where we're coming from. To early detect means you can early fight and before things rage out of control and cause huge damage. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, good stuff. So again, Tom lives in the city. Just a heads up as well, at the Fire Mitigation Alliance, we do a couple of free in-person training classes as well. So we might be doing some stuff later this fall. We'll have some discussions on the last one we did on high-rise electric vehicle response and more of an emergency management side. Again, and then we have Mr. Todd Hutchings here, our friend from the U.S. We've been looking at developing a relationship with a U.S. counterpart, Sunset Bluffs Emergency Management Division. Todd, you just want to introduce yourself and tell everybody what you got going on with Sunset Bluffs.
Thanks for the opportunity to participate. Appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Definitely.
My name is Todd Hutchings. As Adam mentioned, Sunset Emergency Management Division. Our primary focus is, the trusted partner in mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We've been pretty active on the recovery part, out in California, and kind of bringing more attention to the lithium-ion battery issue, especially when we're starting to deal with large facilities or mass cleanup. So we're just trying to, do our part and put the education out there. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here.
No, it's pretty awesome. So Todd met Tom through the Fire Mitigation Alliance on LinkedIn. And then when I was in Sacramento just last week, Sven's going to jump on, Justin, just a heads up. Sven from BC, he made it. So Todd and I got together for got a couple of beers in Sacramento when I was at a HAZMAT conference 2 weeks ago, the same time that Todd was at a flood conference just down the street. So again, it was good to meet him as well. So lots of synergy here tonight with a lot of our partners. And again, if anyone's looking for any of those services, you can reach out to us afterward. So again, we'll jump right into some of the content here tonight. I know we have some other subject matter experts here. We have fire chiefs on the chat tonight. We have emergency managers on the chat tonight. We have other training companies as well, and equipment and service folk on the chat tonight. So when we come together as a group, we know that lithium-ion batteries are definitely the treat of the week, and certainly a challenge for first responders and emergency managers to deal with. Tonight, we're going to kind of shake things up. I know many of the firefighters here have probably seen, how to put out an electrical vehicle fire or attempt to suppress an EV fire, dealing with, cell phones, laptops, and different types of battery challenges. But tonight we want to think more from an emergency management standpoint. We have a scenario we're going to run here shortly on dealing with the mindset of what a property manager would do for a high rise. We'll talk about battery energy storage systems. We'll talk about the containment and cleanup challenges. So lots of things to chat about tonight, but it all starts with the technology of this battery. We know that when it comes to the makeup of these batteries, there are many different metals that are comprised of the parts of these batteries. So whether it's the graphite that is involved, your manganese, your cobalt, your nickel, that liquid lithium, that liquid electrolyte that we know can heat up almost like a pressurized gas can, or shaking a Dr. Pepper bottle would be a good analogy. We know that when the pressure builds up and we have all these hot metals that are basically put together in sheets in these lithium-ion these batteries, we're going to have some excitement. We're going to have a bit of a spark there. So whether it goes into thermal runaway from physical damage, overcharged, undercharged, heat, very cold days, or different ways that the battery will be operating in a non-recommended battery environment, right? Could be a lot of moisture, could be other electrical conductivity nearby. We could have what's called dendrite growth, which is the internal corroding of these batteries. We've seen the videos, we've seen YouTube, we've seen CNN, Fox News, CBC, you name it. There are stories out there when it comes to these batteries becoming an issue when they are damaged. And the main part that we need to remember is the damaged intricate area of the battery that causes the most excitement is when that separator is damaged. Greg, in your opinion, when it comes to the different batteries that you've seen, why is it so important to understand that separator is kind of the part of the battery that keeps that anode and cathode from operating those lithium ions correctly from a normal operating use or path of travel? Why is that separator so important for the group?
It's just like a dam, more or less, is stopping the flow of those electrons going back and forth.
Definitely.
Once that separator breaks or gets damaged, and it's just there's nowhere to mitigate that the charge, so it starts to superheat and super energize more or less, and become overpressurized and overheating, and then the chemical composition of those two products is almost like liquid gasoline.
It's exactly what it is. And as you can see in the picture here, you see that porous separator. It's almost like a polymer product, okay? So that's a great analogy. Greg said it's like a dam. Remember, these batteries are made up of a liquid lithium, not a metal lithium. You have a lot of graphite, nickel, copper, manganese, and metal oxides. When that transfer of lithium ions go back and forth from the anode and cathode, it must be controlled. So as Greg said, if that dam doesn't work properly, right, you're going to have a bit of an overflow there, right? An analogy speaking, saying, look, there's an issue. And when that issue occurs, there's no way to manage that power. And to everyone in the chat, if you want to put it in the chat or you want to answer on video, what is the name of that term when it comes to that battery heating up? What's that term called? If anybody got it. Oh, Pete can't speak this evening, you said. Okay. It's called thermal runaway. It's thermal runaway, right? So a couple terms you want to remember. The propagation effect is when you have one battery cell that propagates. That means it heats up. A white toxic gas comes out of it, particularly hydrofluoric gas is one of the major ones, as well as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen cyanide, a whole bunch of other, methyl ethyl bad stuff, right? So when this overpressurization happens, you're going to see that white gas. It might even smell like bubble gum in the area. You're definitely going to see it. You might smell it before that battery not only propagates or explodes, but then it affects the other batteries within that battery. Again, could be a battery box, It could be a battery bank. It could be multiple batteries that are fused together to create, a large lithium-ion battery. So you think of a Tesla. You think of larger battery boxes that are all affixed together to power a vehicle. It doesn't just take one or two cells. It takes multiple cells with metal strips, with bus bars, and other things that connect them together to allow them to flow and basically add that power together. Well, remember, if that power has an issue, if there's damage to any of those parts, including the cell itself, there is even more risk for what we call thermal runaway. So it's important that we understand that that can happen in any one of these devices. Cell phone, laptops, e-bikes, e-scooters, of course, battery energy storage systems. Todd, in your experience when you're out in California, where were you seeing some of the most of the risks? Were you seeing it in the battery energy storage systems, or is it in the hundreds, if not thousands, of Tesla vehicles or other EVs that were abandoned during the wildfires? What were some of the issues that you saw when it came to some of your biggest lithium-ion battery hazards?
Well, and that's a great question. It's not when a lot of the first responders are dealing with just the ones and twos and, this week, next week, the following week, when you have a deflagration of a, large incident fire roll through communities, now just think about all those little handheld devices, all the Tesla walls, all the little nuances that everybody, has laying around in their houses. And then, you're literally, timesing that by, 100,000. So that just brings that catastrophic, event to a whole new level. And there's nothing to contain it because, the foundations are gone, your vegetation's gone. So everything's going right into the soil.
That's a great point. And again, we're talking about the chance for pollution. We're talking about water runoff, for the amount of water that it takes to suppress or eventually, hopefully, extinguish one of these fires as we minimize any stranded energy that is left in these batteries. There's so many variables with that. You look at the amount of landfill fires I've went to within my fire department in the last few months. Crazy. I've been to 3 landfill fires already. I'm not blaming them all on batteries, but at the end of the day, where there's smoke, there's fire. That was a good little pun there, right? No applause for that. But if you think about it, we don't have the landfill fires. I've been to 2 or 3 garbage truck fires as well. So obviously something's getting crushed in there that is causing a little bit of excitement to happen and for the fire department to respond. When I was at the Sacramento HAZMAT conference a few weeks ago, I had realized, and speaking with other subject matter experts down there, I know they're dealing with the Palisades fire and some of the remnants of the electric vehicles and other hazardous material issues they had to deal with after those large events. But then you think even on a small scale, which turns to a large scale, vape pens, battery banks. These are some huge things that we're seeing for the most consistent fires. Although they're small, you think about the exposures that they're near, those are causing a lot more issues than you think. There are more fires with e-bikes, e-scooters, and vape pens than there is when it comes to dealing with electric vehicles and other larger powered products. So again, be aware, what do we have out there for quantities now? Where are they being manufactured? Are they being, CSA certified here in Canada? Have they been tested via, UL and others? When they're coming from China, right? They're coming from Temu, right? Or all these other cheap websites. This is the quality you're getting, and we just need to be aware of that. We really do.
Hey Adam, I was on the subway last night, and there was on the screen that that it educates people on the platform. There was a screen that said, beware of uncertified batteries.
Yeah.
they will hurt your neighbors or something to that effect. So that's a PSA that's fine. That's getting out there.
It's true. It's true. And again, that's we're talking local level, right? So the fire department, I know in major cities have been fantastic with public education campaigns. FDNY is definitely leading the charge when it comes to public education campaigns, from shopping malls to flyers to videos and social media. And I want everyone to remember this tonight as we go through these different roles and responsibilities. If us as first responders who understand the hazard at the highest level are not able to adequately understand the hazards of a battery, the way to mitigate or suppress some of these risks, then how can we expect a politician or someone from a higher level, even some of the testing committees out there, they're absolutely incredible at what they do. But keep in mind, they will not be able to provide the regulations and laws required because of the time it takes for them to put everything together and back it up with testing, where us as first responders can get the word out there a little bit faster, whether it's through your local fire prevention bureau, whether it's through your local fire chief, right? And urging politicians to start making laws. We know the building codes are not keeping up to current lithium-ion battery standards, the fire codes as well, the sprinkler codes, whether it's an underground parking garage to an industrial facility to overall battery storage and transportation. We are being very reactive with this. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade at some of the government agencies, but we all need to work together to relay as much information as we can to these different levels, the local level, provincial or state, and even federal, because there is a lot of challenges there. When you look here at the roles and responsibilities, you think of that local level, incident response, fire department, local management of emergencies, coordination of first responders. Many of the large fire departments in the province do have answers to deal with lithium-ion batteries. We might have some special tools like an undercarriage nozzle or a fire blanket, which is still up for debate, but we can talk about that later. But then we can also talk about the fact that many fire departments have battery containment units, whether it's cell block or an RLG Lisa box, special containers to put the burnt out battery cells in that may still have stranded energy. But remember, there's only a handful of departments that I know of in the province, particularly the larger ones, that have answers to those questions. At Firehouse Training, we're getting calls each and every week from fire departments across the province and this country looking for answers on how to deal with these batteries, including local airports and major airports across the country. So don't assume that they all have a plan and procedure in place. The local level is still a little bit behind. Greg, in your experience with your teaching and other HAZMAT background, what have you found from the local level where you're still seeing gaps in? Do you agree with me? And maybe it's the larger departments that have more of a volume for these calls that kind of have their ducks in a row? Or do you think it's a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both, but like you said, it comes down to budgetary restraints, right? You get the larger departments that have a lot more money than the local smaller municipality departments that can't afford to have the overpacks and the specialized gear. Coming down to that. That's not to say it's an excuse, but it does come down to, the governments and the local, not emergency management, the councils and stuff like that, to look at and realize, okay, what's it going to take how do we mitigate these and how do we just get rid of them? They're just in this, I think, in the same boat, like you're saying that the larger departments have this stuff. Like even like today, I was having coffee with a friend of mine from the military, and guess what the military's buying? Lithium-ion diesel-powered subs.
Oh, nice. That's a combination of disaster for sure.
Yeah. So their request when we put out for request for proposal is they're looking at longer submersion times for up in the Arctic, and that was one of the requirements. So
interesting. Well, hopefully they're not putting the color diesel in those things like I am in my pickup truck lately. I'm kidding. Please don't rat me out on that. If anyone knows what color diesel is, Google it. Anyway, so Mr. Pfaff, are you there? Chris, if you're there from Washington State, I wouldn't mind your feedback. There he is. Nice hat. I like your hat, pal. So Chris, give a quick introduction of yourself too, and let us know what's happening with your state level when it comes to dealing with the batteries? I know you guys have been proactive in some ways. I'm just kind of curious with your investigation background too.
Well, what I'm working on, I'm out of Washington State, Adam. We run HAZMATandrescue.com, but I'm also a municipal firefighter up here, working in the prevention division currently. And I was actually putting together a presentation that I'm going to be working with the Washington State Deputy Fire Marshal's office next month with fire codes when it comes down to energy storage systems, the new technologies, maybe not lithium-ion battery powered submarines, but we do have battery powered ferries, we have battery powered planes, we have 100% battery powered locomotives. And you guys were talking just as I logged in here a little bit late about everything. I've got multiple batteries. We all have all these batteries at all these different construction levels. You get a high quality product, you're going to typically have a safe battery. Like what I'm talking to you on right now with the tablet, it's a good quality product. But if we go down to the old corner smoke shop and we buy a vape pen, that's typically going to be a cheaper, lower quality battery. So absolutely, energy storage systems, they do have a risk. They do have a hazard. Adam already talked about that with what California is dealing with right now. That's a huge problem.
Oh, yeah.
But those are all high quality batteries. The submarine batteries, they're going to be high quality. The batteries on our ferries and the locomotives, our EV batteries, they're high quality. When a problem happens, it still happens and it's a huge mess. But the biggest issue that we're seeing as municipal responders is all these tiny little batteries, the tiny little setups. Because like Adam said, in the waste stream, I actually did an inspection of a waste transfer facility yesterday.
Oh, really?
And they were telling me how they can't keep a hold of this stuff. They're having tons and tons of fires. I think in the United States and Canada alone last year, we had 2,600 fires that are attributed to lithium-ion batteries. And that's just at transfer stations, not even including houses, EVs, or anything else.
It's true. And then you get into the recycling facilities too, or whatever they're trying to do up here in Canada. Todd, question for you from a Fed level, in your experience from the emergency management, have you seen much from the Feds when it comes to a larger government oversight, or do you find it's still more of a state or municipal problem that they're trying to put and leave at those levels? What have you seen much push from the very top?
Well, I what I see is, and what I'm hearing back from the folks, across, jurisdictions and states, is there's such a lack of information on what is actually happening in their own backyards.
Yeah.
Sometimes the feds are the leading that train, pushing right through. This is what we need. And then it's like, okay, the state folks get on board and they go, okay, well, you guys are funding the projects, and you're getting these large banks and farms of batteries that are powering a lot of the server farms, with the fact that we are the age of AI, we have a large demand for backup power supplies. And so one of the things that I posted on my LinkedIn page was a recent event that kind of got squashed. They were looking at a facility that was 10 acres.
Yeah.
And it was in a little podunk town in Tennessee that was off the grid, but the feds, the TVA, which is a Fed-based program, they are the folks behind distribution of electricity throughout the Tennessee area. And they're pushing these large projects. And the local communities are, they're farmers, they're, maybe a one-station department. And the technology is being pushed so fast that nobody has the idea what's being dropped in their laps before somebody steps in and says, hello, does anybody know what's going on? So to get back to your question, I think it's a lot of the feds are pushing it because they're all specially funded projects.
Well, it's an interesting take, and again, moving on here, you look at what was already brought up a couple times tonight, the battery containment, the disposal. We know there's lots of questions around this, but when, as a first responder or a property manager, a fire investigator, anybody involved, We need some type of containment equipment. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know if it's the tariffs. I don't know if it's because of maybe the snow is coming soon up here in Canada. I don't know, but we cannot get certain battery containment products up here unless you throw them in the back of a diesel Dodge pickup and bring them across the border yourself and don't tell anybody. But anyway, you look at Cell Block, you look at the RLG box, you look at Obexian, you look at the cooler products. Again, some amazing products out there from the containment standpoint. Chris, in your opinion, without going on too long of a diatribe, what are you seeing in your state? And do you see fire departments all having something a little bit different from the battery at the scene to taking it to recycling or disposal? Do you have some type of containment system that's consistent out there, or is it still the wild, wild west?
Oh, we're out here as far west as you can get. It's as wild as you can get, without a doubt. Across the American and the Canadian Fire Service, we're still trying to make it up as we go. And we're all looking at that federal level. And we just talked about that. The TVA, perfect example. There's a push for alternative energy, which is great, but at the same time, they don't want to show any of the downsides and the protective features. So over the last 4 years, we've been working through this. We've been copying fire department response agencies like FDNY, where they're using overpacking with cell block. But the difference is New York, FDNY, they're a sealed system. They got New York Department of Sanitation. They have a complete sealed unit. Yep. Most of our fire departments don't have that. So we need to go back to that HAZMAT consideration that they taught us way back in the 70s. We don't take HAZMAT. We should not be taking these batteries back to the fire station with us.
And that's where the lines are being blurred, I find, right now.
Yeah, and the problem is, it still continues a problem because these things can reignite later, as we all know. Well, okay, that means we have to get them out of the building. Okay, so do we want to put them in a box with vermiculite? Do we want to put them in a cooler box? Should we be expending that? Well, in the HAZMAT world, we don't have to worry about that because we can bill people. Well, who carries HAZMAT? Well, it's commercial and it's industry. It's not usually, with rare exception, it's not usually at people's houses unless they're making a meth lab. That's when we've got systems for that as well.
Right.
So we don't see it that often, but these things are stinking everywhere, and they're in every fire. Not almost, they're in every fire. So we have to get them out of the house so we don't have a rekindle. And then you start thinking about the transfer situations and the recycling, having that partnership and getting the codification, the language. And unfortunately, right now, down here in the States, at least, I can speak for that. I can't speak for Canada, but I think it's really similar. The United States EPA keeps on pushing it down to the state and the local levels.
They are, yeah.
And we're looking for national guidance. We're trying to push that mark. We're trying to push that conversation. So right now, I think everybody's in the wild, wild west on that. But a lot of the disposal companies are addressing this head on, but they're looking for legislation and regulation to make sure they do it right. And Adam, you and I were hanging out down there in Sacramento, talking to some shippers, and they were absolutely wanting some of the new regulations to make sure that they knew that they were doing it right.
The one thing I noticed when Chris and I had these conversations with the shippers and those in the spill response industry, I was in that industry eons ago before I was a full-time firefighter. They even have questions about it, and they're all doing something a little bit different, right? So right now, to give you a heads up, whether it's a certain product that might be on back order, there are fire departments right now in our Greater Toronto area that are back to using sand and water. Okay, like we cannot get this stuff in certain areas, so we need alternatives. We need to understand why we're using this stuff. Now, again, whether it's the AccuGrain that you see here on the PowerPoint, to assist with vapors, minimize any chance of rekindle, off-gassing, whatever they're trying to sell you on, right? And it is still better than water and sand, in my opinion, based on the tests that I've seen. And then we got to look at the real bad stuff. Chris and I have had the chance to learn about the fact that the metals that are off-gassing from these products, whether it's a large battery energy storage system or a small vape pen, they are not coming out of our skin like they should with soap and water. They're not coming out of your clothing, whether it's Nomex, bunker gear, your flash hood on your as part of your personal protective equipment. This needs to be taken seriously. I'm not here to promote any particular product. All I'm saying is you need to have an alternative option when you're on the fire ground. I am telling you right now, when I was out at a local airport doing training, you look at a lithium-ion battery bank that's going off in a cabin, and a cabin crew responds. Maybe on-site firefighters arrive once the plane lands. You have flight attendants that are currently dealing with this event. What is the time between leaving that scene, being exposed to the smoke, whether it's a little bit or a lot, and then going to a washroom or getting some type of mass or gross decon with maybe soap and water, or maybe a really cold fire hose when you land on the tarmac, if that's the option? What do we have as an alternative? I'm a fan of decon wipes. It could be baby wipes. It could be different types of wipes that are out there. These are the kind of things that we just need to consider as that meet in the middle from a first responder running the scene before grabbing a shower back at the fire station, or a flight attendant that just took a battery pack that went in the thermal runaway and put it in a heat-resistant battery bag. Anthony, are you here tonight? Anthony actually sent me a whole bunch of different decon wipes. I'm not sure if it was Fast Act or not, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Yeah, so Anthony, tell us what you currently have with your company out in Western Canada, and what have you seen the most success with for the post-fire decon side of things? Like this can't be spoken of enough. Like, it's very, very important. Lithium-ion batteries or not. What are your thoughts on some good decon wipes?
Well, I carry a product called D-Wipes, but there's other wipes out there like fire wipes, responder wipes,
Yep.
hero wipes, stuff like that. The only thing is I caution to take and test them, because some of them that I have tested do have some skin irritation and stuff like that, especially around the eyes and stuff like that. So really look at what you're getting. And then see if they have any testing that they have done in regards to contaminant removals and what they do claim to remove. But yeah, definitely something that you want to take and have in your toolbox or with you or on the response unit to have available and get the contaminants off of you as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, it's true. Keep them in the rig with you. Throw a couple in your pocket. Super important. Just when you're out and about, because there will be that time that you need them between running a call and then getting back to the station.
It's not just us either, Adam. Like, it's also the frontline paramedics, especially up my way.
Yeah, you're right.
Because they're going to be responding. They're going to be the full-time guys on the road before the volunteers are being paged out, and they're getting to the scenes with these vehicles being in an accident and starting to off gas, and they don't have respiratory protection like we do. And then they sort of decon process. So, they're getting faced head on right away, right?
Law enforcement as well, and anyone that's coming into contact with these things. We need to have answers. And I get calls, not just from industry health and safety teams. It could be a mine. It could be an oil and gas company looking for answers, maybe a nuclear plant. But then you're getting into health and safety for a fire department, health and safety for law enforcement and EMS going, what do we do for our staff if they encounter a lithium-ion battery event or an electric vehicle fire? And as first responders, especially those of us in the HAZMAT space, really understanding this maybe a little bit more than your average firefighter, we need to have answers, because if we can't provide answers or options after training sessions like tonight, or attending conferences, or learning from some of our friends like Patrick Durham at Stash Training and other great content that's out there, you're not going to get an answer from your fire chief, who's probably non-HAZMAT trained. You're not going to get an answer from the Environmental Protection Agency or our environmental agencies here in Canada. You have to see what works and what doesn't, and at least have options to keep yourself as safe as possible as we continue to figure this out. We are building the plane as we fly it, right? As my good friend Bobby, the HAZMAT guy, says. And when it comes to suppression, there's many different options out there. We understand that foams do not work, because foams are used to help minimize that oxygen level that will typically be on a flammable liquid or other type of Class A and Class B fires. But remember, lithium-ion batteries don't need oxygen to burn. Now we have, copious amounts of water as an option. We have fire blankets and others, which is still up for debate. And I might get Chris's take on that in a minute. But we have EcoGel, right, which is a Canadian-based product. And the white papers did come back that we have the advantage of using a product like this to help suppress lithium-ion batteries, either for electric vehicles or even other smaller LIBs. again, I'm not going to sit here tonight. I know if Peter can hear us, if you're able to chat or put something in the chat about your product would be great. The white papers did come back that said that this does have an effect on lithium-ion batteries. Peter just wrote right there, exposure protection, vapor and runoff containment, prevention of the propagation. Those are some options. We're not sitting here promising that it's going to put that fire out. Every fire is different. My good friend Bobby, the HAZMAT guy, said it best. We've seen 1,000 batteries burn. We've seen 1,000 batteries blow up, whether it's in testing or in real life, and they all seem to burn different. So we are still looking for options. There's no silver bullet out there. But again, products like EcoGel, the use of a fire blanket, undercarriage nozzles. I am a fan of throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it. But Chris, what are your thoughts? You got that chagrin on. What are your thoughts here?
Oh, the letters, the conversations, everything like that. No, I like we're all trying all these different tools to these tactics, and I do appreciate it. I've worked on, before we had the undercar spraying tools commercially available for my HAZMAT team. I put one together from a decon manifold. I've talked to a lot of foam manufacturers. I haven't spoken to EcoGel. One of the more recent ones that I spoke to, it claims to stop the oxidization process, but the owner of that company states specifically that unless you get that product onto the cell itself, it's not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, they've been pushing that. You're right. Yeah.
Right. And my smirk came from the most recent hubbub and discussion over the last few months about those dreaded EV blankets. And
what are your thoughts? Let's hear the truth. What do you think?
Man, I don't want to take up the entire evening, but for people that don't know the hubbub about this, the IEFF, the NFPA, and FSRI, they all came out with letters. The FSRI and NFPA came out with a joint statement, and the IFF came out with a statement. Make sure to take a look at that if you have a chance. For both of their letters, they disavow the use of EV blankets, and they do not recommend fire departments get them, use them, train on them because of the potential deflagration or explosion hazard. Bridge Hill Fire Blankets just recently came out with a video explaining the incident one of the incidents that propagated those letters. It comes down to due regard and appropriate training. I'm not going to speak against any of the four-letter organizations, but just like Adam has been working on and talking to members across your guys' amazing nation, identifying the tools that can work or may work and making sure that we are properly trained is critical. We're not going to go into a structure fire with 1 3/4 inch without any training. We have to have bare minimum training. The same thing goes for deploying a blanket, spraying the foam, using an undercar spraying tool, using any of these tools or techniques. You have to be appropriately trained. You can't just buy EcoGel and throw it on the rig and say, yep, we're good to go. We're ready. Right. No, you need training. We need to understand how to properly apply the product or how to deploy the product and when we need to deploy the product, which is even more important.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. Again, I've had a couple industries call me already. Their SOGs, a local aluminum plant, a couple of chemical plants that are looking for a minimum of 4 to 8 hours of training a year now on dealing with lithium-ion batteries. Now, they have their own SOGs. Now, when it comes to suppression, there's many different options out there, but we know there's a hazard. We know that there's an awareness level, and it comes down to training, whether it's training of the risk and hazard awareness or any mitigation option you have. It could be as simple as, calling 911, closing the door and pulling a pull station, to utilizing some type of fire blanket that might be nearby or some type of fixed facility fire nozzle. Like there's many different options out there. So again, EcoGel is an option. Chris, you just got the invite there from Peter. Maybe give him a call. Retired training chief with Toronto Fire. So pretty esteemed. I know I mentioned that product to you a few times. You should have a chat with him yourself and find a little bit more about it. Also, Sven had quite the take in there. That's interesting. He said his fire departments out in Western Canada are looking at having them toss the gear if it's a major lithium-ion battery exposure or contaminant. You can't remove the heavy metals without liquid CO2. Yeah, you're right. And Chris and I have talked about that before. I don't know if Saanigi here in Ontario is doing that as an option, using the CO2. Is that a thing in Washington State, Chris? I guess, are your local sanitation, your gear cleaners outside of your in-haul extractors, are they using CO2, or is it just a talking point?
So yeah, I'll be really quick. TEEX, we worked together with TEEX to do this. And this was a national/international test. And if you guys take a look at TEEX PPE contamination testing, the report's out there, and it shows between 21 and 95% removal of the heavy metal nanoparticles with a normal extractor for the NFPA 1851 standards. Right. One of the frustrations I have with that NFPA standard, and they're not going to update it, is that to pass the test, for water washing, if they remove 50% of the contaminants, we're good to go. Well, what if those contaminants are 200 times above our exposure levels? Okay, getting it down to 100 times above our exposure levels is still a hazard. So my recommendation is, if you're in a structure fire with significant amounts of lithium-ion batteries, and once again, it's a nebulous statement, or if you're on a significant EV fire, energy storage system fire, where you know that there's lithium-ion battery smoke, you need to send it out to advanced cleaning. And when I send our bunks out to advanced cleaning, it does go through CO2 extraction. Okay. And that TEEX survey says that between 95 and 99% of those contaminants are removed. Okay. So it does get rid of, it'll never get rid of all of them. It will never get rid of all of them. That's one of the difficulty. But the biggest thing they found out in the TEEX survey is that the majority of the deposits of the nanoparticles were on the outer layer. So unless it's an extreme event, and this does happen, heck, we all have stories where multiple firefighters had to throw gear away. I wouldn't carte blanche throw away a $5,000 to $8,000 set of bunker gear just because it was exposed to heavy metal nanoparticles. We have ways to clean this. There are ways, and they're getting better at that. And there are discussions on the NFPA panel on making sure we have appropriate testing, which unfortunately is expensive, but it can be washed.
And keep in mind, everybody, there's a difference between exposure and contamination. So every case is different when it comes to what you've actually been in contact with and what you haven't been with. And remember, as HAZMAT firefighters, you need to think like this the whole time. How can we change the environment? Can you use a fog stream to manage vapors and keep them away from the community or other first responders? Can we use some type of fire blanket to put down after the fire is out to manage any stranded energy or protect exposures from smoke and heat or a potential rekindle? Right. So again, just use what you can and have options available, but there's no one size fits all here. It is a case-by-case basis on what kind of fire you're dealing with, duration, and the type of tactics that you completed on those fires. You look at things like battery energy storage systems. I have about 2 or 3 slides on that. You look at that time, value, and size. You need to ask yourself, as an incident commander, an emergency manager, what are our major risks? We understand the hydrofluoric gas. We understand the major smoke, the chance for explosions. Are there chances of any potential civilians nearby from a life safety perspective? Are we more concerned with the amount of property damage or environmental concerns if we flow absorbent amounts of water at this type of battery energy storage system once we shut down that main grid or that main power shutoff? We know there's ventilation and explosion considerations with the pressure building up inside of these battery energy storage systems that can be used for stored energy to be used after hours. It could be used for stored energy that should be used during peak hours to help assist the current grid. So the decision-making here is very important. Critical thinking and decision-making from an incident commander is a must. The majority of decisions that I've seen from a tactics perspective is that most civilians from a large area fire such as this will protect in place. That means we will not have them evacuate into the area to be exposed to the toxic gases or potential explosions and heat. And again, when Chris and I had the chance to meet years ago down in Michigan State Police Academy, which I highly recommend, has some amazing HAZMAT courses, very budget friendly as well. They spent an afternoon talking about AGLs, acute exposure guidelines. You need to quantify. You need to quantify here, just like my little fake air monitor, AKA stress ball. All right. You need to quantify what these numbers are in the community and what's acceptable. And Chris, you've seen this before. We use that word safe. The air quality is safe. What do you think when you hear that term? Do you think that the media is telling the truth, or is it a bunch of fake news? What do you think?
Look, there's nothing wrong here. Just move on. There's nothing to see. No, we saw this with East Palestine, and I'm not trying to throw the EPA down here under the bus,
Yeah.
but it was a huge messaging faux pas that they had. Just like on the micro level, when we go on to a CO alarm or an owner investigation, we should not be going through a house with that little stress ball saying, "Yep, the environment is safe. You guys are perfectly fine." It's like, no, we say, we got no readings on these specific gases. I can't see for anything else. If you guys have an issue, be sure to call us back. But right now, we don't see any readings with our devices. The problem is on these large scale events, and we saw this in Moss Landing, that the EPA and the authorities down there in California started saying that everything is safe. There's nothing to worry about. We can't test for all this stuff. And that's the difficulty and the issue. So we have to try to extrapolate as much as possible.
Yeah.
With fire smoke, we can to a point. I'm never going to say we're going to be perfect on it, but for shelter in place, for waste treatment facility or storage transfer facility fires, we can extrapolate pretty good with some plume modeling. For battery energy storage systems like this one right here, it's really tough to extrapolate that because the heavy metals, they filter out at different times of the fire. We found that out that manganese and cobalt, they had significant deposits due east of where the fire was, about 5 to 10 miles. But the lithium was all centered in one area, I think north. Actually, it's the opposite.
Interesting.
The heavier metals were north.
Yep.
But the lithium was just to the east because the winds at the beginning of the fire were going to the east, and then 4 hours later they shifted to the north. So we can't really predict with that plume how much exposure really people are getting. And remember, no matter what, just like Adam's talking about with those AEGLs, that when we see those numbers on our air monitor, those are for an 8-hour day, 40-hour week for us as employees.
Yes.
This is the general public, 24 hours a day, susceptible people with respiratory issues, the older community, the younger community. So they have much lower exposure levels. So just because my alarm isn't going beep, 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 doesn't mean it's safe for them.
That's a great point. Remember, and again, if you check out our good friend Patrick Jerome at Stash Training, watch his YouTube videos, multiple videos showcasing his displeasure with the engineering side of these energy storage systems. The ventilation systems are underpowered. The fire suppression systems will not withstand the heat and the amount of fire that actually will come out of a fully charged lithium-ion battery, whether it's a bank, whether it's a module. You look at what happened in Surprise, Arizona. That was one module about the size of my amplifier that I had in high school and my little stack radio system that caused enough heat and explosion risk that injured those firefighters. I saw it firsthand. I had the chance myself. I've responded to 2 BESS in our city. There's a pucker factor there. If the person from Rogers at the data center is not going to make entry when he's getting a heat alarm in one of these things, you know there's a problem. We were doing calculations of correction factors on the outside based on what type of batteries that they may have. We were making entry on air without any signs of heat or smoke. There's some serious risks. When I was at the airport last week in Regina doing some training, seeing that different battery energy storage system, again, smaller in size when it came to the different banks or modules that are there. And how about the Canadian military base I visited where there wasn't enough money in the budget to finish the fire suppression system inside of this? I can't make it up. I know the designer, I know the engineer. I saw the standpipe or whatever you want to call it sticking out of that battery energy storage system, and it was not to be completed. The local fire department didn't know that that was an inactive fire suppression system. So these are the things that we need to remember. So maybe tactics might involve let it burn. Maybe your consideration whether to flow copious amounts of water or not to flow water, depending on, again, how much energy is stored, location to near a waterway, highways, railways. Like there's lots to consider here. But I have seen mistakes from flammable liquid and HAZMAT fires where fire departments are throwing a lot of water at something they probably shouldn't have thrown water at, and ended up causing an environmental disaster for weeks and months to come. In fact, one of the HAZMAT fires we had in our city ended up contaminating water in Lake Ontario as far as Buffalo. And I didn't think Buffalo could get any worse. Kidding. Sorry, that was a joke. But again, when it comes to dealing with this risk, that's a tactical decision we need to make. Chris, what are your thoughts on the environmental contamination side? Now that you're doing a lot of investigations, the flowing water versus not flowing water for something like this, do you think that it's not a priority still, even with fire crews, as we're making that decision to get a whole bunch of aerial apparatus throwing water at these things?
Well, firefighters, as you know, it's a loss unless we put the fire out. We have to put the fire out, and we have to put the fire out, right? We have to be the winners. We ended up having two significant events here in Washington State a few years ago, both of them fatality incidents involving Teslas. One in eastern Washington where it's dry, it's desert-like situation, and it's very rural, so we have volunteer fire service. So Tesla flies off the highway at a rate of about 80 miles per hour, blows up, spreads batteries everywhere. It takes about 40 minutes for the fire department to get there. They don't have a continuous water supply, so they make the option that we're not going to put water on it at all. We're just going to let it burn. It was unfortunate for the driver, but when our state version of the EPA ended up doing soil contamination testing, they found no above hazardous levels of the soil where this battery was.
Okay.
Now, of course, that's going to bring up that second consideration and what we really worry about and who we is. We had a second event about 6 months later in Western Washington, where we all know about Washington State, and it's wet. It's wet out here. We have the Puget Sound, and the fire department right next to it. Lady drove off the road, high rate of speed, massive fire, fatality incident, split the car in half. Fire department was only 3 minutes away. Continuous water supply, maximum water application. And our state level of EPA, the Washington Department of Ecology, they did soil contamination testing, and they identified per quote, I actually have the numbers, but per quote, that the levels of heavy metal particles inside the soil was astronomical. So now we have extensive soil contamination, and this was next to the Puget Sound. So we have extensive water contamination from the HF, from the toxins, from the metals, and it's verified and validated. So where did the metals go on that Eastern Washington fire in the desert? They went up in the smoke plume, and then they deposited out onto the wheat fields where we end up getting all of our bread. The majority of our bread or wheat in Washington, in the Northwest, and a lot of America is from Eastern Washington. And that's the same issue that happened with the Moss Landing fire, because that area that was contaminated is called America's Salad Bowl. So now we're harming potential agriculture. So the fire department, because we want to put the fire out, or is the environmental, because now environmental has to have that discussion. Are we going to contaminate the air or the soil? And then you start taking a look at those other factors of the owners of the wheat farms, health organizations for our food stocks and food supply. But I'm only going to take it one level shorter, and I'm just going to go to the environmental side, because we work with them a lot. And they gave me the message that they would prefer that the air is contaminated versus the ground.
Really?
The reason being,
okay.
Think about
okay.
that plume. You get that plume hot. Like the picture that you have right there is perfect. You get that fire hot, you get that plume hot, that smoke goes up high, it distributes over a very large area. So now we all get to share in the harm, but we share at a very, very low level. If we put the fire out and contaminate the soil right there, we have taken that soil toxicity to astronomical levels in that specific area. We have harmed ourselves and exposed ourselves to the hazard. We've exposed that area or the environment, the watershed, the salmon spawning areas that we have here in Washington, whatever environmental wildlife that you guys have, it harms that specific area and those responders specifically, versus letting it burn, and now it goes miles and miles and miles downrange, which now everybody gets affected, but at a much smaller level. We are flattening the curve.
Oh, flattening the curve. Well, we know up here we got to protect those Canada geese. I mean, Chris, like it's our pride and joy. Don't forget about the polar bear and the moose, right? So.
Oh yeah.
All joking aside, here the general rules, and again, I've had the chance to meet with Chris, Todd, and others at these conferences where we talk to other subject matter experts, and I'm constantly pulling information. I'm learning, and we're seeing what these industry best practices are. Based on my conversations with others that are a part of NFPA committees, we're still 3 to 5 years out when it comes to putting pen to paper to finalize tactics and strategies when dealing with these events. Right now, from talking to the EPA when I was at our conference in Oklahoma, to others that I've spoken with in Michigan, you're looking at a minimum of 48 hours following a battery energy storage system fire before they feel it is safe for a first responder to enter. Now, hear me out on this. We already talked about the lack of ventilation. We understand about the stranded energy, the heat, and the risks involved with these batteries. Is it a few cells at a time? Is it only a couple that are propagated? Or is it a multiple banks inside one of these energy storage systems that are putting us at risk? We don't know. So while you confirm the fire is out, or if you can, with the use of our thermal imaging cameras, heat guns, air monitors, of course, your PIDs for volatile organic compounds, which do come off these batteries, many different devices that are available to us. The ventilation issues and that risk is still prevalent over a longer period of time that we need to be aware of. So there's a big push, especially in the US, for those that have drones and robots, use unmanned or unstaffed equipment to make entry into these facilities, but not everybody has those options. So again, some of the experts that I've learned from say you need to have that so-called cooling off period before considering making entry. And as Chris and I talk about, whether it's a HAZMAT fire, whether it's a hazardous materials event, a spill, a leak, we can't make tactical decisions unless we're quantifying what we're doing. God bless the fellows in Arizona and others. You look at East Palestine, Ohio, everyone's doing what they can to make the best decisions possible. But the more equipment you have to quantify, I feel is the best way to make these decisions, to back up what your decisions will be. And I find that smaller departments, whether you're volunteer or career, that don't have some of this equipment, if all you have on your truck is a 4-gas sensor meter, or maybe a CO sensor, these fires are different now. Every fire is a HAZMAT fire. So whether you have an HCN detector for hydrogen cyanide, volatile organic compounds with a PID, 4 or 5 gas sensors available, we need to consider using those a bit more as part of our decision-making process for any type of HAZMAT event. What are your thoughts on that, Chris? Just the quantification to make the best decision possible before making entry, before evacuating, before protecting in place, instead of trying to take the guesswork out of it.
Well, yeah, and those 4-gas monitors do need to come on out. They need to get pulled off the rigs much more often.
Definitely.
Those big chemicals right there, and they help quantify the environment. But you go back to Arizona, and Captain Hunter Clare and his crew, they did everything that they thought was right, and they did everything that was right as of that time, because we didn't know at that time what we know now. We now know that for especially the energy storage systems and the battery platforms that we see in energy storage systems, when they start going into thermal runaway, they're the safer batteries, meaning that they will not ignite until we get to about 550 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that means in your guys' world, but down here,
I think it's in Celsius or something. It's in Celsius, yeah.
And because they don't ignite, they just vent. They're still going into thermal runaway. They vent out about 50% plus of their gases being hydrogen. So we're now getting into a 50 to 30% mixture with open air of pure hydrogen. Hydrogen has a flammable range of 4% to 76%, and it has an explosive range of about 15 to 20%, going all the ways up to about 60%. So we're in not only in a flammable environment, but an actual explosive environment. What we can use with that 4-gas monitor, knowing this and understanding that hydrogen is now ever present, and knowing that 1% equals 10,000 parts per million. So if your monitor is going freaking crazy, you are getting high levels of that monitor. carbon monoxide sensors have a massive affinity to hydrogen.
Big time.
So it's a cross interference, and it's not an exact correlation. So you're not specifically quantifying, now you're qualifying.
Yeah.
But if you see high levels on CO, don't just sit there and think, well, I just need to pack up and mask up, because it's a toxic hazard.
Yes.
You need to start thinking that this is now a flammable / explosive hazard. And this is a key pre-indicator for that possible explosive event that we are seeing, that we saw in Montreal because of an energy storage system in a garage, that we saw down there in Arizona, that we've seen in Georgia, and we've seen up here in Washington, we've seen in California multiple times. We've seen across the world on those videos that Patrick Durham has with these safer batteries, that hydrogen explosion. And that little 4-gas doohickey, whether it be a multi-gas 4-gas monitor or a CO sensor that you have with your EMS bag, that can give you pre-indication of this hazard. But remember, hydrogen is high, so you got to monitor up in the upper areas where that smoke plume is.
And I want you all to consider, everybody, like your municipalities, because of this newer technology, they don't have those emergency plans laid out like you would think for dams and droughts and earthquakes and others. And we need to think, and Todd said it best, Chris said it best, the local level, your state level, like it's up to you for the boots on the ground to have some type of plan in place based on your experience and working within your incident command structure to manage this. Todd, with your emergency management background, obviously, whether it's floods or the wildfires, do you foresee the possibility of some type of plans in place for large battery energy storage systems? Or do you think we're still seeing communities really miss the mark on this?
Well, I'd like to kind of dive in on Chris. He's brought up several times about Moss Landing. And excuse me, for everybody that's on here tonight, I want to kind of paint a little bit of it, take the time to paint a picture here. All right, so you can kind of get a general idea of what happened in California.
Yeah.
On January 16th, 2025, lithium battery fire erupted in California's Moss Landing energy facility, forcing evacuations of over 1,200 residents. But this just wasn't a utility event. It happened on the edge of one of the most ecological sensitive coastlines in the United States. All right. We're talking, Elkhorn Slough, National Estuary Reserve. We're talking about the Monterey Bay National Sanctuary. So as we talk about this, as the scope of the energy storage across the country, this stands as a full spectrum case study. Fire suppression, toxic exposure, public health, and environmental crisis all in one place. And you have to wonder, it's like, well, if there's a national wildlife refuge right there, and there's a Monterey Bay Sanctuary, which is, Monterey Bay Aquarium. If anybody knows about this area, south of San Francisco, it's a protected coastline. But for whatever reason, the politics, the uneducated, the unknowns, they were able to put this facility in place. And then, all of a sudden, they had things go off on them, and they're dealing with soil tests of nickel, cobalt, magnesium, up to 1,000 times their normal levels.
Crazy.
So, I know we're all talking about the onesies and twosies, and we're starting to kind of scrape the level of, these larger facilities coming into town. But just realize, here we are, 2025. And, we talk about all the technology and advances and science. But when it comes to industry stuff that they can still slide into the door, because the market, the technology is moving faster than we can get the information, or even to be able to sit there and say, wow, what's wrong with this picture here?
Yeah.
And they're just stomping this stuff in here, and the local officials saying, oh yeah, it seems like a really good idea. Yeah, and it's going to bring some jobs. Oh, let's drop it into our backyards. And, and you talked about, that's right. Moss Landing is also right there in the mouth of the salad bowl of the world, Salinas Valley. You know, every time, any place you go to, any produce store, I guarantee you there is something that came from Salinas Valley, Gilroy, and we had one of these significant events in a small town that's probably populated maybe, you know, a couple of thousand people, but it was a news blip. So, you know, it's like what Chris is, you know, keeps on coming back to is like, this was a significant event. It may be on a small scale, but I guarantee you, gentlemen, this will not be the last time you see these large events happen.
That's a great point. No, I appreciate that, Todd. Again, like there's so many case studies so far about what we've seen here from large events and small events. One thing I wanted to do here, kind of before we finish up, Justin from DESA is going to run us through a quick scenario dealing with a high-rise type event with battery fire and other intricacies that may occur during heavily populated building. So again, I think we should come together as a group. When Justin reads off what this incident notification and alarm condition is and what we're dealing with, maybe we'll just put all of our ideas together on what some of the hazards and risks are, and what some of the immediate actions we should consider as an incident commander, a property manager, or what have you, when dealing with a lithium-ion battery event in a building. Justin, take it away as we finish up here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we're going to change things up a little bit this time around. Usually we geared it up towards firefighters. So this time we're going to involve building managers as well.
Nice.
And give you kind of the view from the building manager side of things. So I'll start us off with our tone. We got an automatic alarm at 1432 Oak Street. Multiple calls reporting smoke from upper floor apartment. 5th floor, time 14:45. Okay. On arrival, building manager is outside and is talking with a tenant. The tenant was on the fire floor and was a neighbor to the apartment that is on fire. And their statement, they've lived across the hall, and I'm going to make a call out here, and somebody will recognize the name here. We've got Havoc Hank. Lived across the hall from Havoc Hank for about 3 years. Lately, he's been fixing and modifying batteries for e-bikes and scooters.
Oh.
He even sells some on the side to friends and family. He usually has a lot of those big battery packs in his apartment, stacked near the windows and in the living room. I've seen him charging several at once, and he often talks about turning it into a small business. I was worried something might happen because he keeps so many of them there. So site context, on arrival, we've got an 8-story mid-rise / high-rise residential built in 1995. We're looking at about 75,000 square feet. Protection, we've got automatic sprinklers. We've got our standpipe, fire pump, smoke heat detectors. We have magnetic hold open on fire doors. And we've got a pressurized stairwell. And we have HVAC with floor zones.
I like it. I'm going to give my idea first. Can I go, Justin?
Yep.
All right. So the high-rise firefighting side comes out in me. I know that if I'm with a small fire department, I typically in a 8-story or a little bit higher, even a little bit lower, if I have minimal staffing, I'm going to tell you all right now, do not take the elevators. I know the IFSTA or other high-rise gurus say that you can take the elevator 2 floors below and then walk the stairs. But consider this, we have small departments here in Ontario, 8 firefighters in 5 minutes. And if they get trapped in an elevator or that elevator gets stuck, their firefighting crew is gone. So I'm just giving you all a heads up here, whether in the US and Canada, if you have small staffing contingent, I'm not recommending that you take the elevator. You're going to have to tough it out and take the stairs. You are the only firefighting contingent within that community. So that's kind of my mindset on just making entry and considering how you're going to approach it. If I have confirmation that information came in as a lithium-ion battery fire, we get that quite early in our dispatches in Toronto. It's been a little bit better lately. I'm thinking the big hose. I'm getting the big smoothbore nozzle, the 2.5-inch hose, 1,000 liters a minute at 350 kPa. I know Chris doesn't know what a liter is, but maybe you can calculate that in gallons. But that's my mindset, because we know we need copious amounts of water. What are some of your thoughts, guys? I think ventilation's huge.
Does the apartment complex have a PA system to either keep people shelter in place?
Great point. Great
We
point.
have access. We have access to the our room, and we do have a PA system.
So, either evacuate the floors below and then 2 floors above, shelter in place until further notice, and give directions on how to shut down HVAC, close your windows and doors, etc.
Here's another thing too, and I've been there. I'm not a fan of bringing air monitors into fires. We know that typically they saturate the meter. The fire chiefs get mad when it costs the department money. We know if you see smoke or smell smoke, there's bad stuff in the air. It's probably smoke. However, I like to make an exception with this. I do prefer bringing in your air monitor, your PID, and other equipment if you confirm that it's a lithium-ion battery to just confirm any other off-gassing or cross-sensitivities that may be in the air once you confirm that it is a battery fire. We know it's a toxic fire. We need to treat it differently. It's not campfire smoke, ladies and gentlemen. I know we can ventilate it all day long and let Granny sit in the apartment across the way watching Jeopardy, and I've been there when she's made that decision. It was a disgrace. We ventilated a high-rise fire for 2 hours, and then the chief says, let's finish by ventilating by having every occupant open their door and open up their window after the entire hallway was burnt out. Now, that wasn't a lithium-ion battery fire, but who knows what Granny is now ingesting as she's watching Jeopardy for the afternoon, because the fire chief told her to open her door and open up her window to finish letting out any dissipating smoke. Absolutely the wrong move. Use your positive pressure fans and keep the air moving, keep it flowing, keep doors closed. So now, again, these are toxic gases. So be very, very cautious about, and I like what Greg said, protect in place. We don't want anybody going in a hallway. We don't want anybody going in a stairwell. Justin already said that the stairwells are pressurized. Maximize it. I was a field incident technician, a chief's driver for a call. We had an underground parking garage fire. The chief called in ladder truck after ladder truck in our city. That's usually where we keep a lot of our ventilation fans, to try to ventilate the heck out of that underground parking garage. And he had no idea that that button on that fire alarm control panel and that manual toggle was in the off position for P1, P2, and P3 level ventilation fans. And I kept pointing. I go, Chief, I said, you might want to turn that on. It's red. It should be green. Just flip that little switch. An hour into that fire, he decided to turn that switch on, and boom, all the smoke dissipated even quicker than having 5 frigging ventilation fans on the bottom ramp of that underground parking garage. And we are spoiled in the city. We have what's called a ram fan, which is basically a huge boat, like fan boat type size fan that is on the back of a pickup truck, and we will back that thing right into our underground parking garage and we'll ventilate the heck out of it. And it still wasn't doing enough. We need to use the building's systems. EJ, you have a comment there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a building systems guy, so I'm all behind you.
Nice.
And thinking about the shelter in place. For those of you who have done it, just curious how well it works. So I work in engineering. I'm a volunteer firefighter, but the two worlds are completely different. So I don't see on the fire scene what I see in the building world, right? And within the last year, we had a project, multi-story, and we got kind of in a pissing match with the fire marshal over occupant evacuation, because we were basing certain things like door widths, stair sizes, evacuation paths, and that on, certain floors sheltering in place and evacuating like the fire floor, floor above, floor below. And his argument to that was that is not applicable in this day and age because of social media and cell phones. Everybody in that building is going to get contacted by a family member begging them to get the hell out, and they're going to do it. And I'm just wondering if you guys have seen that, what your thoughts are, if you got any feedback on that.
Yeah, so sorry, I kind of lost track of thought here. I accidentally kept my caps lock off and was yelling at everybody in the chat. But yeah, okay, Chris, you take it off. All right, thanks, pal, for coming out. Appreciate it. I think you had to leave. No, great point. the fire systems, you're right. Like the fire systems, the sprinkler rooms, like when I did industrial fire response as an ERT team, we would break up our team. One would go to the fire location to confirm fire or flow. The other person would go to the riser system to see if the little sprinkler valve was going ring ding ding on the gauge, right? We know if water's flowing. And then we would send someone to the fire pump room to see if that fire pump was running, whether it was the diesel pump, whether it was a Tornatec fire pump system, or the jockey pump. You said it best, EJ. The firefighters don't understand that, and they don't understand how critical and crucial that is when handling these fires and dealing with smoke ventilation systems, fire suppression systems, in addition to bringing up our own fire hose or a water can or whatever other extinguishers we have to fight these fires. There's a huge training gap there.
Hey, Adam, I'm just
Yeah, Tom.
thinking that maybe we should talk a little bit about from a superintendent. What is the first thing that you recommend the superintendent do when he comes upon knowing that there's a battery fire in this environment? And what's the first things not to do? And I think you've said don't go in. Certainly don't go in the room. It's anyways, I'll throw that back at you.
That's a great point. I mean, at the end of the day, when I teach firefighters or property managers, like it's about flow paths. So if we can shut doors, that does a huge service to managing that fire. Shutting down the ventilation systems, pulling a pull station. If it's a lithium-ion battery fire, again, I'm warning everybody here. Many of you already know that when you start trying to use a fire extinguisher on a lithium-ion battery fire, we know that will not put it out. So to make that attempt to even slow down that thermal runaway or slow down that cell propagation, I don't really recommend it. I would just prefer closing the door and trying to seal off that flow path, and then greeting the fire department and letting them know exactly what they're dealing with. It's the risk of the gases. It's the risk of the explosions. It's the risk of the heat. Remember, these batteries burn a little bit hotter too. What did EJ say there? Doors have to be in the positions the ventilation was designed to operate with. Great point, right? Mohammed said it best. He worked as a superintendent. He got a lot of sauce from the firefighters. There you go, right? Can't tell a firefighter what to do. They're not going to listen anyway. Their egos get in the way. Nah, I'm kidding. But honestly, you have to have a plan as a property manager. Here's a quick example. The city of Brampton, just outside of Toronto here, they allow their property managers and others in charge, could be security guard, right? Technically, if you look at the fire code here in Ontario, a security guard can technically be the owner if they're designated as the one responsible for that fire safety plan, if it's after hours or whatnot. They're allowed to actually turn on the smoke ventilation systems and turn on and off the HVAC system to minimize smoke and heat travel. Meanwhile, many departments, maybe including ours, is not allowed to touch certain equipment on a fire alarm control panel because they say we haven't been trained. Every authority having jurisdiction is different. So again, hopefully that answers your question a bit, Tom, when it comes to what property managers can and can't do, because sometimes jurisdictions limit them to do certain things, and they'll say, oh, well, you know what? Wait till the fire department gets here. Here's the problem. Fire departments are not trained on fire sprinkler systems. They're not trained on fire alarm control panels. They're not trained on other specialty systems that might be in that building, and they'll assume the property manager or the security guards are trained. So it kind of sometimes ends up like this.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Todd, when we talk about some of the building systems and other things that we're dealing with for an incident in some of these different properties? Have you seen much in all your years, whether it's from fireside or emergency management, of the challenges between a private industry property manager and that of a firefighter? Oh, you're on mute there, Todd.
I mean, it gets all back to the basics, pre-plan. Know what's in your response area, take your crew out, walk the areas, pre-plan it, talk about worst case scenarios. I know that, it's never an assumption that either party, either the fire department or the on-site people, know what the alarm panel's doing, what the HVAC system's doing. But if you're doing a thorough pre-plan within your response area, you're getting your guys out there, you're getting your boots on the ground, you're doing the weekend scenarios, the walkthroughs,
Yeah.
what ifs. That's the best way to do it. And just like what we're talking about, a lot of the stuff is isolate and deny entry.
It's true.
If we can contain it to the smallest room of origin, and we can keep everybody out of harm's way, either by sheltering in place or shutting down the systems, that's what we need to do as part of our pre-plan.
No, I like it. And again, going back to Justin's points here on his Desisolve scenario, we've hit a lot of them tonight, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about smoke control, the life safety side, the protect in place, system support, sprinklers, standpipe, the information and accountability. What do we do with any vulnerable occupants or other civilians? Did we talk about reading the annunciator, recalling the elevators, the choice to use an elevator or not, door control being a priority? Are we working with local floor wardens to deal with anyone who's mobility impaired, security, or a building liaison to deal with the risks and hazards that we know are within these batteries? The heavy heat, the explosion, and the HF toxic gases. If we prioritize and understand what our risks are, we can make better strategies and tactics to deal with events like this. It doesn't matter if it's in a high-rise building, a structure fire, or even a large-scale battery energy storage system, to a Tesla on the side of the road that's burning. Look at the risks, look at the equipment, and look at the type of training and what we can do to help mitigate. And if we can't mitigate, at least manage that emergency to the best of our abilities. Anything on that scenario, Justin, that you wanted to see as we finish up here tonight? We're getting near 9:30, so I just wasn't sure what your thoughts were there. I think we had a lot of your points thanks to a good old AI.
Yeah, no, I think we hit most, and then after that, it's that overhaul. How are we dealing with that?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And then comes the cleanup. Whose responsibility is it?
Justin,
Right.
I've seen this before. A few weeks ago, we went down to a high-rise fire. 3 days after that fire was out, 3 days, and all those batteries are still sitting in a pile in the middle of that burned out apartment while the fire investigators are continuing to look for cause and origin. I couldn't believe it. As a HAZMAT technician in our city, we typically will go as quickly as we can to remove those batteries from the scene and put them in a proper container to manage that risk, to manage any stranded energy or potential fire. For some reason, that didn't happen. I thought we were going to a fire that happened that day. It was actually 2 to 3 days later. So every department's different. I'm not going to poo-poo the crews that were down there, but we can't sit here on an amazing Fire Mitigation Alliance event like tonight and talk about the risks and hazards and then leave a battery on scene in a high rise for 3 days after it's been burnt out. It's not the right thing to do. So
Yeah. And one other point, because it kind of came up tonight, and Sven mentioned it about throwing out the gear, right? If we're off-gassing all of these batteries into an apartment, right, that smoke's going through everybody's units if their doors get left open.
Justin, I know where you're getting with this.
Where does it end? Does everybody just call the insurance company and go, hey, there was a lithium-ion fire on my floor. My unit was full. I can't keep this stuff.
In my opinion, they're not taking that seriously enough. They're not doing the remediation and decon. I know Chris Gilbert said that. If I told you how many times we have left lithium-ion battery fire events that have happened inside of a building, a structure where rooms have been contaminated or exposed, and those in charge, again, that's above my pay grade, although I am writing for my captaincy next year, they're treating it as a normal fire, Justin. I know it's not what you want to hear, but that's what's happening. And you're right. The couches, the pillows, the pictures on the wall. We need to treat it different. Chris Gilbert said it best. Ensure the personnel safety. Overhaul investigation. Units need more of a remediation and decon. They're not treating it like that. Not from what I've seen. In fact, we left a fire one night after an e-bike was burned out. And I still think we left the fire too early. We didn't ventilate enough as we should. Like, you could feel it in your lungs. It was just a different taste. It was a different type of fire, and it was from an e-bike, and it was late at night, maybe 2, 3 in the morning, and the ventilation efforts weren't a priority as they should for that type of fire. They really weren't. Any questions from everybody before we finish up tonight? I thought we had some really great participation. I like the way it flowed. We talked about everything from battery energy storage systems to large scale, and then of course major fire events.
Yep, that was good. I like the interaction for sure. It was good.
Well, listen, everybody, what we'll do is, again, I want to thank everybody for coming out, on behalf of Tom, Justin, Peter Sells, Todd Hutchings from Sunset Bluffs. Again, please reach out to us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram, follow us on all the major platforms. If you have ideas for future training, you have questions, whether it's structure fires, emergency management for disasters like wildfires and others, to hazardous materials. Justin and I were talking about it tonight, maybe putting together a hazardous materials response or something else that might be a little bit more specialized in the future. Maybe we'll look to plan something like this in maybe late October, early November, I would think. So we enjoy it. Now there's Sven, yeah, HAZMAT nerds, yeah. So we won't see Sven's registration for that one, but no, it's all good. We want to pick topics that are more higher level than just boots on the ground tactics. We have fire chiefs that reach out to us. We have emergency managers. We have private industry. It's more than just putting the wet stuff on the red stuff when it comes to the emergencies that we deal with, and we need to treat it as such. So anything, Tom, that you want to say before we sign off here tonight?
Well, I guess I'm going to post, this recording will be posted up by next week, and it'll be in that on the site, Fire Mitigation Alliance events, and you'll see previous recordings. This is our 6th webinar we've recorded and posted up there, and so you can go back and look at a whole bunch of content and same format as we just did. So yeah, we're going to do more of them, and we'll probably do another one around wildfire in over the fall winter.
I think so.
At
Yeah,
least 1 or 2. So
yeah, for sure. Todd, anything you'd like to say before we sign off, my friend?
No, just thanks for everybody that came out this evening to give up some of their time. Don't be bashful to kind of take the conversation offline.
Yeah,
and have either reach out to all of us or amongst yourselves. The only way we're going to learn from what's going on in the industry is by keeping this conversation alive.
Exactly.
That's why I love it. You know what? We're able to come here, learn together, professional development, continuous learning, and in the comfort of our own homes. And with Todd being across the world, and Tom being across the city from me, and Justin being across the province, it's a way we can all keep in touch, and everyone adds value here. So super excited to have Todd on board with us now, with Sunset Bluffs and others, and we'll just keep the learning going. So we'll get together as an alliance group here and just maybe discuss some further training topics and options that are fun and exciting. And hopefully we'll see everybody in a couple months. Thank you as well, Peter. And thank you, Todd, Tom, and Justin, and everyone for attending. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Keep safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.